I delve into T1D with Maddie episode 3, obviously you can tell today's video is going to be very controversial. I just want to let you guys know, as always, that what I say you can take or leave for granted. Like I said, please don't leave me any hate. I'm expressing what I believe could be changed. My opinions on the subject, what I've read and researched. Again, take what I say for granted or not for granted, it doesn't make a difference. Always remember, too, I'm referencing to America, specifically the insulin increasing problems in America, because I am from America. If you're from another country, please still watch, because you may learn some things that you didn't think you knew about some different things that is the reasons why our insulin costs are higher. But today's video, again, is very controversial, but I am open to speaking about it, and I think everybody should voice their opinion on this, and voice for people who are too scared to. I am not scared to make this video. I am not scared at all to stand up and fight for what we deserve as type 1 diabetics. Because this disease is never going to go away unless there's a cure. I am not trying to offend anybody, I'm just simply stating what I've learned. And with that being said, let's jump into today's video. Honestly, when insulin was first produced, it was sold for $1. I almost guarantee you Frederick Banning and Charles H. Best are flipping over in their graves right now as to how the money-making scheme of healthcare and as a big, huge business has raped millions of people of their hard-earned dollars. We have bills to pay too. Just because our pancreas doesn't work, and it's not our fault, doesn't mean we should have to suffer and pay for it. There are people that are literally running across the Canadian border and the Mexican border to get insulin for cheaper. There are people that are rationing insulin. There are people that aren't testing their blood sugar. And it scares me. And it saddens me. We didn't ask to have type 1 diabetes. It was put upon us. And companies do not understand that. Nor will they ever understand that if something doesn't change. Hey everyone, it's Maddie. Welcome back to my channel. And today's T1D with Maddie episode 3 is all about the high costs of insulin and the high cost of diabetes supplies. And maybe the reasons why it happens. And maybe a couple solutions that could really impact it. Again, I am not a politician. I am no expert as far as figuring out these problems, but these are problems that need to be worked on with large groups of people because this is so complex and intertwined. We need to pull apart these different webs in order to really figure out what the root of the problem is. So let me just start off by saying that there's many different problems and reasons why insulin and diabetic supplies are at a high cost. First of all, I will say this. Insulin, if anybody here works for a pharmaceutical company or if you're an huge insurance company and you're watching this, insulin is not a privilege. It is a right. And I will say that over and over again. Insulin is not a privilege. It is a right. Without insulin, nobody can thrive. Whether or not we get insulin from injections or from our own pancreas, it is necessary in order for us to survive and metabolize our sugar and get energy we need to function. Okay? Anybody that is out there watching this, I encourage you to share this and I encourage you to just post this everywhere. I encourage you to comment. I encourage you to push this on other different places because the more and more this gets spread around along with other articles, other topics, other videos, other posts, the more awareness we can spread and the quicker we can put an end to this misery that everybody goes through. Because of the high cost of insulin and the high cost of diabetes supplies, some people cannot afford the things that they need to best control their blood sugar. Diabetes is not a one-size-fits-all disease. Some people prefer shots. Some people prefer insulin pump. Some people, like myself, really love having a CGM, where others would rather finger prick. But the insurance companies lump it all together and figure out what is considered a luxury, what is considered not a luxury. And unfortunately, many of the awesome tools and technologies that are considered luxuries really aren't. Because if it was their child or themselves with type 1 diabetes, they would want this covered, they would want the best price for it. But because they don't live with the disease, because they don't see the emotional, mental, and physical strain it has on us, They think that it just can be considered a luxury and that we can get away with pricking our fingers 20 times a day and giving ourselves 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or a dozen shots a day. I'm sorry, I have a life too, just like you do. I have bills, just like you do. Excuse me, you need to figure out a way that we can all get covered here. And the same with insulin. Some people are in such financial strains that they are rationing insulin. By rationing insulin, I mean that they are not taking an appropriate amount of dose to cover a meal and risking letting their blood sugars run high or letting their blood sugars run high, or they are cutting back on the carbohydrates and the amount of food that they really need to survive, or they're filling up less at meals or eating a lot less and losing weight and being malnourished and taking smaller doses to cover that just to make their insulin last longer. I hate to tell you guys, one day I basically ate hardly anything at all just to save a couple more days worth of insulin because I had used a lot of insulin the past 2 days and I felt like I couldn't have any more because I wanted to make the insulin last as long as possible. Well, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to fight for what I need here. It wasn't a true ration because I wasn't letting my blood sugar go high, but I just ate super duper like nothing but like a salad for dinner, which is like no calories, and there are some nutrients, but it's not like enough to fuel you. A small salad that literally only costed me a unit and a half of insulin, and I was hungry. You guys, I did not feel good, and I thought this is wrong, that I have to sit and worry about paying for the food I'm eating, but then I have to sit to pay to have a pancreas. That makes no sense when everybody else has a totally functioning pancreas. So why is there such a high cost specifically to insulin? Like I said, the diabetes supply costs are high too, but a lot of the reasons I'm going to be saying also applies to them. But if I just say the word insulin, know that I'm probably referring to all diabetes supplies in general. So the first thing that I have on my list is for uninsured people. We are paying for uninsured people, people that do not have health care, people that do not have insurance plan, or are walking around in America uninsured. Anytime they go to the hospital, the doctor, get prescription medications for a certain illness, etc., etc., it has to come out of a cost somewhere, and who ends up paying it is the people like me who have private insurance. I'm more dealing with the private insurance too. If you have Medicare, obviously, even people on Medicare, you are paying supplements, you are paying in to have your insurance. It is taken out of your Social Security. For those of you that are not in America, Medicare is basically the insurance that people get after they retire, or if they've been disabled for a long period of time, they apply it for Medicare. And it's basically funded insurance for certain people of that nature, for older people, or for people, like I said, who have been on disability for a long time and will no longer ever to be returned back to work or have access to private insurance. They get on Medicare, but you people on Medicare know that you do pay a supplement. You do get so much taken out of your Social Security check to cover the cost of your insurance. So anybody who is paying out of private or Medicare is paying for people that are uninsured. And some of the ways that they pay for this added cost is jacking up the price of supplies and other added things. They got to make their money somewhere. It skyrockets our premiums and health insurance. It also skyrockets the cost of all the materials we might need to help control a certain autoimmune disease like type 1 diabetes. So that is the first reason. People should definitely check into buying their own health insurance, because what they don't realize is running around uninsured is a high risk to them, but it's also a huge risk, and it's a huge financial strain on people who are trying to honestly get private insurance or are honestly on Medicare and have worked their entire lives, or have for whatever reason became disabled and disabled for a legit reason and cannot have access to their own insurance plan or buy their own insurance plan through work or on their own. So if you are uninsured, I encourage you to go get insurance. It's going to help you in the long run, and it's going to help alleviate some of the costs there. And like I said, the reasons that I'm giving all apply to the high costs. Whether some of these reasons are much bigger than others, and I think once you solve one of the issues, it'll be easier to solve many others. Whether or not which issue needs to be resolved first could be debated and argued, but as long as we are working together to solve these problems, there won't be issues. The second thing I have here is we do, as Americans, we do subsidize other countries for their pharmaceutical and medical supplies. We send money and help towards them to give them better costs, to get their pharmacies rolling, to keep get their medical stuff rolling, especially to countries that are more third world or are struggling. We as America are kind of like a big helping country. We're willing to dish money to help out pretty much any country. But unfortunately, in order for other people's countries to have cheaper costs to insulin, cheaper costs to medical supplies, cheaper costs to healthcare, Americans do have to subsidize. Now, we don't subsidize every single country and every single thing and every single tier of items, but we do subsidize quite a bit. So if you're in a country that is subsidized by America, be very thankful that there's somebody here in America that is paying for that. I don't really mind helping other countries, but there comes to a point where you can only help so much and get the country rolling into whatever situations they need to be in. So subsidization is another reason why our costs are higher. So, like I said, I'm not jealous, but be extremely thankful if you live in a country where access to insulin is cheaper or more accessible or it's free or whatever the case may be. Just know that there's probably somebody here in America like myself and millions of others that are probably paying for a lot of that cost. The third thing I have on here is obviously the manufacturing costs. Obviously, you guys know in order to manufacture supplies, medicines, pharmaceutical stuff, whatever the case may be, there is a manufacturing cost. So we are paying for it. And the more and more that needs to be manufactured, the more and more that needs to get paid to go towards that manufacturing. We're paying for the electricity, we're paying for them to pay their workers, to keep the plant running, etc., etc. We are feeding these businesses in order for them to pay their bills and pay their manufacturing costs so that they can give us access to those things. And I'm going to add a note from the subsidizing other countries. A lot of we do a lot of research here in developing different cures. Other countries do this as well, but I know America is a country that literally works to find cures for a variety of different illnesses, autoimmune diseases like type 1 diabetes, MS, ALS, Huntington's disease, different cancers, you name it. We are trying to find cures, and some of their cost is going to those cures. Now, whether or not it's actually going there, I could sit and debate with you on too, because I don't see where it's going, and I feel like a lot of that is hidden, and a lot of it is shoved under the bus, and maybe a lot of it could be laundered too. Again, that's more of a conspiracy, but who knows how much of it is actually going to research. I hope a lot of it is, and I pray and hope to Jesus Christ and God the Father that it is, and people are doing the humanitarian thing, but there are crooks out there in this world, which leads me into corporate greed. There's a lot of people that have dollar signs in their eyes, especially people that are huge CEOs of these companies. All they see is the dollar signs. They really don't care what goes on at the very bottom, that people are struggling to live, that people cannot afford these medications, that people are hungry because they are cutting down the amount of food they eat to save on the insulin, that people are running higher blood sugars and risking complications. And what the insurance companies and these big CEOs of these companies don't understand is this is only going to drive your cost higher, because people that get sick are going to go in the hospital, and if you're in the hospital, that's racking up lots of time, lots of money, lots of effort on diabetic ketoacidosis, when they could be attending to other people that really need medical attention, that have been in a car accident or whatever the case may be. So it's wasting a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of effort on our part to not have these things accessible, because you are literally putting people's lives in danger, and in the long run you're hurting costs, and you're going to be finding out that people are going to have complications. They're going to be needing to go in for eye surgeries. They're going to be needing to go on dialysis, which is also a huge money making cost, that you sit on a machine and it literally filters your blood because your kidneys no longer function. You're no longer going to be able to feel properly and enjoy your life. You're no longer going to be able to have a job, and therefore you're not going to be contributing back to the pool of society. So it's a huge markdown for anybody that has this corporate greed, to realize that down the road it's only going to crash and burn, and you're going to end up having more costs later on. But unfortunately, people with corporate greed only see what's right in front of them. They don't see behind the dollar signs. All they see is the money, money, money. And if they just get money in now, they don't care what else happens to other people. They don't have that empathy or that sympathy. Not saying all do, but I think many all have the dollar signs in their eyes, and that pushes things to where they're not understanding people's needs and concerns. So another reason why our costs are expensive is the growing amount of people with type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is much less common than type 2 diabetes. Of all the people that have diabetes, 10% of the world has diabetes, but of that 10%, only 5% have type 1 diabetes, which is the autoimmune disease. And what they don't understand is that that rate is growing and growing and growing. Even though type 1 diabetes is less common, it is still much more of a common autoimmune disease than many others. It's probably more common than Huntington's disease or MS or lupus even. It's more of a common thing, and more people that need it, the more and more people need insulin, the more and more people need diabetic supplies, and that just pushes more pressure on all these companies to keep pushing things out. And the more they need to push out, the more money they need to drive those pushes and to get things shipped out to where they need to be. So that is another reason why that happens. However, this cannot be controlled. Until we find a cure, we cannot stop the amount of type 1 diabetics that are diagnosed every year. I read somewhere that I believe 80 people in the United States are diagnosed every day with type 1 diabetes, 80, and there's 50 states. So you're talking a little over one person per every state every single day has been told that they have type 1 diabetes and will be dependent on insulin for the rest of their life. So keep that into consideration, but that's something that we cannot stop. And another thing I'm going to talk about is the way the insurance loopholes things and the way insurance defines things. Now, unfortunately, even though the insurance has things coded and has things separated, I still think the insurance companies lump diabetes together. I believe they lump type 1 and type 2 into diabetes as diabetes. That is not the case. And I think they treat type 1s and type 2s the same, that it's diet-induced, that you need to lose some weight, and you're going to be all fine and dandy. Well, that's not the case. And not all type 2 diabetics are at fault for their disease also, and they need to understand that. And they also need to understand that if they don't take care of type 2 diabetics, they eventually, too, end up on insulin injections for their lifetime, too. And their pancreas will get so burnt out that they can't do anything. But insurance companies, you need to realize that type 1 diabetes is nothing that we did. And therefore, if it is not our fault, you should not be putting harsh things upon us. And the big pharma, listen to me closely, you should not be putting harsh things upon us and hurting us and forcing us to follow all these different guidelines that you want for us to have access to things. I'm sorry, it's not our fault that we ended up with this disease. There are probably tons of reasons why we ended up with this disease that we can't control. Exposure to toxins and the dirty, filthy viruses that fill the earth, literally, you guys. That's probably the reason why it happens, and they're just people that are more genetically susceptible. You can't help your genes. You can't help to what family you're born to. You can't help into what amino acids code for your genes, people. Okay? They need to understand that it is not our fault and that diabetes is not lumped into one category with all types of diabetes. And same goes for other types of diabetes. There is MODY, which is mature onset diabetes of the youth. Obviously, people that are more of the latent autoimmune disease of adults that have what they call type 1.5 diabetes are going to be a little bit different in the way they progress versus a normal type 1, I guess you could say. It is the same disease, but it is a more slower progressing version, I guess you could say. And then there's gestational diabetes. They need to treat all the different types of diabetes as different. And there's even diabetes that you can literally be born with. I don't know the name of it, but I'm sure it has something to do with neonatal diabetes. They need to treat that way differently than other diabetes, because diabetes is not just diabetes. Each different type of diabetes has a different pathogenesis and has a different way of going about treatment decisions. So therefore, the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical reps that work together and bond together, they need to understand that there's a huge difference. And the final thing that I'm going to really talk about is more so to do with the contracts between the pharmacies and the insurance companies. Now, this has everything to do with contracts. It has everything to do with getting the best bang for their buck and trying to get things at more reasonable rates. For example, an insurance company might only want you to go through CVS Pharmacy. And if you go only through CVS Pharmacy, you might get the best rate, but in turn, you're controlled. Then if you go to another pharmacy and buy at a more expensive rate, that just all intertwines. There's all these middlemen that have to work to get things transferred and shipped and get things at the best rate, and that is why things skyrocket too, because we're paying these middlemen, and these certain pharmaceutical companies are getting paid to be partnered with certain companies, and that turns into more of a monopolizing thing, and there's not healthy competition. And if there's not healthy competition, any company can jack their prices up, and knowing that people like us with type 1 diabetes require insulin daily, they feel like they can get away with it because they know we have no choice and we have to buy it. That is the sad truth that they basically revolve their money and their greed around, is that we literally have to have insulin to survive, and we have to know what our blood sugar is, etc., etc., and they make it so hard and difficult for us to fight. And it's truly sad that it's based around corporate greed, it's based upon deals, and it's based upon a huge reign of control. But in the end, it's going to catch up to them. In the end, there's going to be something that's going to end up changing, or there's going to be some changes made that can really put some things into perspective. What can be done to help this out? Well, I, for one, can't 100% for sure say. Somehow we need to get the government to regulate some of this. However, there cannot be too much government regulation, because that would put a hamper on the free market and capitalist society that we Americans live in. On a free market economy where everybody can earn their own way, where everything can be kind of as you go kind of thing, where the government really doesn't control things. But there needs to be a little bit of control. I don't think it needs to be extensive, because again, that would hamper the capitalism. But a huge reason, the industries that produce insulin are not regulated by our government. There's Eli Lilly, there is Novo Nordisk, and Sanofi those are the three big oligopoly insulin making. And the fact that it's oligopoly, there's not enough other healthy competition to get more of the generic stuff or get the same stuff that's cheaper, and they hang on to patents so long that they can continue to drive the prices until generics are made. If we can get more generics made of insulin, that might end some of the problems. We have to work to make sure people that don't have insurance get insured, that we watch how much we do subsidize to other countries. Again, I don't mind helping other countries, but there comes a point in time where you can only give so much help. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't force him to drink. And other countries need to understand that they can't keep expecting handouts from other countries, like America. So that's some of the things that we maybe can do. The fact that we don't have a healthy competitive market, the fact that there's oligopolies, that nothing can be shared across anything. It's just not healthy competition. It's not a healthy, the way our healthcare works here in America is not healthy, and it's not getting healthier. Costs are going higher and higher because of paying for uninsured people. Costs are going higher and higher to help subsidize other countries, whatever the case may be, to fund research. Like I said, I don't mind paying, but there comes a point in time where you can only pay so much, or you get sick and tired of paying money that you know is nothing but corporate greed, or nothing but useless and is helping somebody get a mansion. What are they going to do with that mansion when you're dead? Let me ask you guys that. Or if you're got a mansion and you're working for these people, what are you going to do with your mansion when you're dead? You can't do anything. That's right. Once you're gone off the face of the earth. You should be looking more to what happens after you die than what's going on in the current time. So I'm going to quick read something I took from Diabetes Forecast. A lot of the information I got here was from this Diabetes Forecast website, which I will link down below. But I'm going to read a quick thing. Basically, America does not, like I said, does not regulate the price of prescription drugs. One of the reasons insulin is rising in price so much, essentially, is because drug companies set the starting price at which the insulin must be purchased. We don't have a healthy competitive insulin market. As it is, only a few companies make insulin, which I named those 3 companies, and the cost of all of them keeps going up. This suggests there's no real price competition. Typically, the price of a prescription will be tempered when generic drugs enter the market after the patents expire. These cheaper generic drugs create competition for brand name drugs, forcing them to bring down their prices. I had briefly mentioned about the patents, but here's where the issue comes in. So why are there no generic forms of insulin? Because it's considered a biomolecule made of different biological, biochemical byproducts. Because basically it's a hormone. That's why we literally cannot get it cheaper. Ask me why. I don't know why that is. Something that probably could be changed too is making it able to have more generic forms of insulin. Now, I use Eli Lilly, but this Basaglar is insulin glargine, which is the equivalent of Lantus, for any of you that take Lantus, but I do believe that this is cheaper. Not 100% sure, but again, it depends on your insurance company. And there's where the whole big vicious cycle again comes in. It's the insurance companies working with the medical suppliers, working with the pharmaceutical reps, all these middlemen in between that are causing these high sky rise insulin prices, you guys. This is the issue. This is the issue we need to address. And I think I've said enough on this. Like I said, I think I did it in a very mature manner. Like I said, it frustrates me. And it angers me that there are people out there that can't even have access to insulin. Everybody has the right to insulin. Insulin is not a privilege, it is a right. Like I said at the beginning of this video. Always remember that. Again, always remember to fight for what you believe in. I encourage you, like I said in the beginning of this video, to share it. And put it anywhere you want. Like I said, enough people stand up, a change is going to be made. You don't stand up, changes won't be made. It is time that we take charge and we don't let pharmaceutical companies, insurance companies, and medical suppliers bully us into what we have to pay. We have the rights, we have the disease, we live with it every day, therefore we should have the right to decide how much we pay for it. I'm going to leave you at the end of this video with this. Remember that you are strong. Remember that it will all work out in the end. Remember that people are working and fighting, whether you realize it or not, to help maintain decent, affordable health care. Remember that you have this disease for a reason. And remember that you are worth it. Take care. God bless. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye, everyone.